In 1986, a mysterious chain of events started shaking the very core of U.S. intelligence. Spies who had been secretly working for America began disappearing one by one. Among the most shocking cases were Valery Martinov and Sergei Motorin. These weren't just regular informants. They were America's eyes behind the Iron Curtain. Their sudden disappearance wasn't some random coincidence. Something far bigger and far more dangerous was happening in the shadows. And just days later, the devastating truth came out. Every single missing spy had been executed. It was a chilling message, loud and clear. There was a traitor inside. Someone deep within America's own intelligence agencies was exposing their agents and delivering them straight to their deaths. The FBI and the CIA immediately went into overdrive. They pulled together a task force of their sharpest minds, the best investigators they had. And ironically, the man chosen to lead this elite team was none other than a highly respected FBI agent, Robert Hanssen. Years passed, and the mystery only grew darker. American spies kept vanishing one after another, while the U.S. stood powerless, bleeding intelligence at an alarming rate. But what the CIA and FBI never saw coming was that the very man they trusted to hunt down the traitor was the traitor himself, Robert Hanssen. But how did this man manage to deceive the most powerful intelligence agencies in the world for decades? How did he expose America's spies one after another, handing them over to their deaths without raising a single red flag? And the biggest question of all, what kind of trap did the FBI and CIA finally set to bring down Hanssen after he spent 20 years playing his deadly game from inside their walls? If you just stumbled on our story by chance, welcome. Here you'll find thrilling, mysterious, and strange stories from all around the world. Subscribe and be part of the journey. And now, let's enjoy the details that make the story. To really understand how Robert Hanssen became one of the most dangerous spies in American history, we have to go back to where it all started. Robert was born in Chicago on April 18, 1944. His father had served in the U.S. Navy before becoming a police officer. But he wasn't just a cop. He was a harsh, military-minded man who ruled the household with iron discipline. For young Robert, home wasn't a safe place. It was more like a brutal training ground. Every mistake meant punishment. Every move was criticized, and his father's constant humiliation left scars that never really healed. This toxic environment planted seeds inside him: anger, resentment, and an obsession with secrecy. As a kid, Hanssen was withdrawn, highly intelligent, but deeply isolated. At school, he wasn't the social type. Instead, he spent hours buried in the library, devouring books about spies and espionage. He became fascinated with control, the idea of knowing people's secrets while keeping his own hidden. And with his natural talent for math, he started excelling at analyzing data. But there was always a darker side. Even as a boy, he spied on classmates, eavesdropped on conversations, and stalked people from a distance, treating them like targets in a covert mission. After high school, Hanssen went to college. He started out studying chemistry, but quickly switched to information systems and computer science. In his mind, knowledge meant power, and whoever controlled the flow of information controlled everything. Step by step, his choices were steering him closer to the dark path that would one day shake America to its core. His first job was as a computer specialist, but Hanssen felt it was far beneath him. In 1971, following in his father's footsteps, he joined the Chicago Police Department. Almost immediately, he stood out for his analytical skills, especially when it came to handling intelligence-related cases and data analysis. But even with his success, Hanssen felt restless. He thought he was smarter than everyone around him, and he saw regular police work as dull, lacking the thrill he craved. What he really wanted was the dark side. Then, in 1976, the opportunity of a lifetime came knocking. Hanssen was offered a position with the FBI. For him, it was like a dream come true, finally stepping into the heart of the most powerful law enforcement agency in the world. Thanks to his skills and sharp mind, he landed a spot in the counterintelligence division, working directly with the CIA. His role put him face to face with the most sensitive secrets about the Soviet Union, right in the middle of the Cold War, when both sides were desperate to infiltrate each other. Hanssen's job involved building data systems and creating information networks to prevent Soviet infiltration. He excelled at it, proving himself over and over again. But deep inside, it still wasn't enough. He wanted more, bigger risks, higher stakes. Instead of just hunting spies, Hanssen began to wonder, why not become one himself? To explain why someone betrays their country, intelligence experts often use a simple acronym, MICE, money. Some people sell out their country for cash. Ideology. Some betray because they hate their government or sympathize with the enemy. C, compromise. When the enemy catches something to blackmail you with. E, ego. The most dangerous motive of all. The belief that you're smarter than everyone else, untouchable and above the law. For Robert Hanssen, ego was everything. He saw himself as a genius, far superior to his colleagues at the FBI, and he looked down on his superiors. That arrogance, that hunger to outsmart everyone around him, became the fuel that ignited the darkest chapter of his life, the chapter of betrayal. Just 3 years into his FBI career, in 1979, Robert Hanssen made a move that would change his life forever. One day, he walked straight into the Soviet embassy in New York. This was no ordinary building. It was the heart of Soviet operations in America, a place where Cold War negotiations and shadowy deals played out behind closed doors. Hanssen went up to an office used by Soviet military intelligence, dropped off an anonymous letter, and left just as quickly. In that letter, he introduced himself as an FBI counterintelligence officer and offered his services as a potential spy. At the end, he left a way for them to contact him, using a fake name to protect his real identity. When Soviet intelligence officers read it, they knew they had just been handed a golden opportunity. The letter was rushed back to Moscow, and the Kremlin approved his recruitment almost instantly. From that moment on, throughout the next 2 decades, Robert Hanssen funneled top-secret FBI files straight into Soviet hands, in exchange for hundreds of thousands of dollars. One of the first and deadliest secrets he delivered was jaw-dropping. He exposed a high-ranking Soviet general who had secretly been working for the U.S., feeding the Pentagon sensitive intelligence. His name was Dmitry Polyakov. At first, Moscow doubted the tip, but after planting listening devices in Polyakov's home, they confirmed it. He was indeed a double agent. The general was recalled to Moscow, arrested, tried for treason, and executed in 1986. This was Hanssen's first big win for the Soviets, proof of both his loyalty and his lethal value. But Hanssen didn't stop there. He also leaked one of America's most ambitious covert projects, a massive underground tunnel the FBI was building beneath the Soviet embassy in Washington, designed to tap into their phone lines. The operation had cost millions of dollars and years of planning, But thanks to Hanssen's betrayal, the Soviets immediately stopped using the embassy for sensitive communications. Years of effort and money wasted, and so the deadly game went on. Hanssen handed over devastating secrets, pocketed stacks of cash, and still managed to keep his FBI cover intact. Until one day, his double life almost came crashing down. While working on another letter to Soviet intelligence from his home office, his wife walked in, catching him red-handed. She read the letter with her own eyes, and this time, it wasn't about his constant cheating or personal betrayals. This was treason against the United States. Hanssen scrambled for excuses. He told her the letter was full of fake information, that he was just trying to mislead the enemy, and that, in fact, he was still a patriot. But she wasn't fooled. She knew he was betraying his country, just as he had betrayed her. Being from a devout Catholic family, his wife went to the church for guidance. She confided in their priest, who confronted Hanssen directly. The priest urged him to repent, to quit his betrayal, and even to turn himself in if necessary. For a brief moment, Hanssen seemed shaken. He pulled back from his Soviet contacts and lived quietly for a few years. In that time, he was even promoted within the FBI, becoming a supervisor in counterintelligence. To the outside world, it looked like he had turned over a new leaf. But that peace wouldn't last. By the mid-1980s, specifically 1985, Robert Hanssen slipped back into the shadows. He reignited his espionage activities, setting the stage for an even darker, far more dangerous chapter of betrayal. If you made it this far, hit that like button and drop a quick comment. It doesn't cost you anything, but it really helps a lot. Now, let's get back to the story. After 5 years of silence, Robert Hanssen returned to his dark game. The first message he sent back to the Soviets wasn't random. He carefully picked one of their intelligence officers, someone he knew wasn't under U.S. surveillance. In that letter, Hanssen exposed a mole inside Soviet intelligence itself. Viktor Cherkashin, a man secretly feeding dangerous information to the CIA. It didn't take long before another message followed. This time, Hanssen revealed 3 more American assets inside the KGB: Sergei Motorin, Valery Martinov, and Boris Yuzhin. And at the bottom of the letter, Hanssen wrote a chilling condition. This information is worth no less than $100,000. He made it clear. He was back, and this time, he would serve the Soviets harder than ever, making up for the 5 years he'd been quiet. The Soviets didn't hesitate. They showered him with cash, expensive gifts, even diamonds. But here's the thing. Up to this point, Hanssen never gave them his real name. Instead, he operated under the alias Ramon Garcia. He was paranoid that one of the KGB officers might secretly be working for the Americans. If his true identity ever got exposed, it would mean death. To protect himself, Hanssen devised a brilliant, low-tech system for exchanging secrets. He'd place a small piece of tape on a signpost on a certain bridge. If the tape was vertical, it meant there was a package hidden underneath the bridge. A KGB officer would come, retrieve the documents, leave the cache, and flip the tape horizontally to signal the drop was complete. Simple, subtle, and almost impossible to trace. This method kept him safe for years. During his second wave of espionage, Hanssen leaked over 6,000 pages of top-secret FBI files. In return, he collected nearly $500,000, plus jewels and other luxury gifts. Every single spy he exposed inside the Soviet Union was tracked, confirmed, and once proven guilty, most were executed. And Hanssen's betrayal went far beyond just outing spies. One of the most devastating secrets he gave up was about sophisticated listening devices hidden inside the cars of senior KGB officers. Once tipped off, the Soviets stripped them all out, costing the US millions of dollars and destroying a priceless intelligence advantage. But Hanssen's treachery didn't stop at his country. It bled into his personal life. He cheated on his wife relentlessly, and in one of his most disturbing acts, he secretly filmed her in humiliating situations, then sent the tapes to his close friend, Jack Hoche. When Jack confronted him, thinking the tapes had been sent by mistake, Hanssen coldly replied, "I hope you enjoy the little gift I sent you." It was sick, twisted, proof of a man with no conscience, someone who lived only to dominate and control those around him. By the late 1980s, Hanssen's double life was in full swing. At a fancy lunch in an upscale restaurant, he spotted a young dancer. They grew close, and when she learned he worked for the FBI, she was instantly intrigued. He told her he was there on surveillance, watching Soviet spies. On their second meeting, he stunned her with a diamond and ruby necklace and a brand new Mercedes. He spoiled her with cash, luxury hotels, exotic trips, all funded by his Soviet blood money. Some reports even suggest that this affair wasn't just about pleasure. It may have been orchestrated by the KGB themselves, using her as another asset. But while Hanssen was busy living his double life, money, women, betrayal, the United States was waking up to a nightmare. American operatives inside the Soviet Union were being wiped out. Covert operations collapsed before they even began. Classified secrets were flowing straight into Moscow's hands. And slowly, painfully, U.S. intelligence began to realize the harsh truth. There was a traitor buried deep inside their own system. During that time, there was an FBI agent named Mark Walk. Because of his friendship with the Hanssen family, he visited their house often. One day, Robert's wife whispered something that made Mark suspicious. She'd noticed huge amounts of money suddenly appearing around the house. To prove it, she opened one of Robert's drawers, and there, hidden between some socks, was $5,000 in cash. She never said her husband was a spy, but she pointed out the obvious. The piles of cash didn't make sense compared to Robert's FBI salary. A few days later, Hanssen himself casually mentioned to Mark that he was thinking about leaving the bureau and moving abroad. That's when Mark's doubts grew stronger. He went straight to his supervisor and reported everything he'd seen and heard. But to his surprise, his boss brushed it off, telling him he was exaggerating. After all, Hanssen was one of the bureau's top men, highly skilled, highly trusted. No one could imagine he'd betray his country. Years went by. In 1991, Robert Hanssen was promoted to head of the FBI's counterintelligence unit. But by 1993, after the collapse of the Soviet Union, the money stopped coming. No more payments, no more operations. His secret income suddenly vanished. All he had left was his regular FBI paycheck. That's when he began thinking again. Why not restart his spy work with Russia, the Soviet Union's successor and still America's enemy? There was only one problem. He had no direct contact with Russian intelligence. But with his position inside the bureau, he knew how to find one. He tracked down a Russian intelligence officer working on U.S. soil, approached him, introduced himself under his fake name Ramon Garcia, and handed over a sealed envelope. Inside was a message. "I am Ramon Garcia, a senior FBI officer. I'm offering my services to Russia." What Hanssen didn't realize was that the Russian he contacted was actually a double agent, secretly working for the Americans. The envelope was quickly passed straight to Washington, exposing that someone inside the FBI was using the alias Ramon Garcia and offering himself as a spy. The Bureau immediately launched a search. They even questioned Robert Hanssen himself. Without flinching, he calmly replied, "No one by that name works here." His cold-blooded confidence saved him yet again. He'd always insisted that FBI men never betray their country, that betrayal always came from outsiders. That boldness, it had protected him for years. But by the late 1990s, the game changed. In 1999, Vladimir Putin began declaring Russia's return to the global stage. Moscow needed spies inside America. With his experience and access, Hanssen was the perfect candidate. He reconnected with a former Soviet handler, now working for the Russians, and his double life began once more. Meanwhile, Washington was panicking. Information was still leaking to Moscow, and the finger of suspicion pointed directly at the FBI. A special task force was created, and the media was updated through constant press conferences. There was a high-level mole inside the Bureau, one who had been active for over 20 years. To nail him down, U.S. investigators secretly traveled to Moscow under false identities. They tracked down former Russian informants, offering cash for just one piece of information. Who is the mole inside the FBI? Most refused to talk, but one finally broke the silence, handing over an envelope and an old cassette tape he used to receive from the American traitor. The evidence was undeniable. Fingerprint analysis of the envelope came back with a perfect match. Robert Hanssen, head of FBI counterintelligence. And the tape? The voice on it was unmistakably his, leaking highly classified secrets. Still, the Bureau didn't want to simply expose him. They wanted to catch him red-handed. So they set up a trap. They offered him a fake promotion to a higher post. Hanssen took it, moving in 2001 to a new office, one rigged with hidden cameras and microphones. Even the house he received as a perk of the promotion was bugged from top to bottom. And they didn't stop there. They planted a young assistant named Eric, who shadowed him everywhere, secretly reporting back. Over 300 FBI agents were assigned to monitor Hanssen around the clock, at home, at work, even on his daily commutes. The endgame was approaching. For a man who had betrayed his country for decades, the fall was now only a matter of time. And then, it finally happened. One day, the FBI, working closely with the CIA, got solid intel. Robert Hanssen was preparing to deliver another message to the Russian intelligence service. Immediately, strike teams were deployed, one group surrounding the bridge where Hanssen usually left his secret drops, while another team tailed him from a distance. On the evening of February 18, 2001, at exactly 4:34 p.m., Robert Hanssen arrived at the bridge, carrying his message. But before he could finish his drop, agents closed in from every direction. Dozens of guns were suddenly pointed straight at him. There was no escape. As they cuffed him, one FBI agent looked at Hanssen with visible disappointment and quietly said, "This is a bad day for all of us." Those words weren't just about the arrest. They carried the weight of betrayal, the heartbreak of realizing that one of their own had been the traitor all along. On July 6, 2001, Hanssen confessed to everything. 15 counts of espionage were officially brought against him. Standing in court, his voice trembling, he said, "I apologize for my behavior. I am deeply ashamed of what I've done. I opened the door to disgrace for my wife and children. I've hurt so many, but remorse wasn't enough." He was sentenced to life in prison, locked away in one of the most secure federal prisons in America, with no chance of ever getting out. And that's where he remained, until June 5th, 2023, when Robert Hanssen was found dead inside his cell at the age of 79. That was the end of one of the most dangerous spies of the 20th century, a man who sold out his country's secrets to its enemies and proved that treachery can hide behind the most trusted doors. And with that, today's story comes to a close. But this channel is filled with more strange, mysterious, and thrilling tales you don't want to miss. So make sure to hit that like button and subscribe, because your support helps us keep going. And if you're still hungry for more, check out the story of the Japanese airplane hijacking, or the chilling case of America's charming serial killer, the so-called ladies' man. Both are gripping stories that will keep you on the edge of your seat. Until next time, stay curious and stay tuned for more.